This is Dana Castle with Function, and today we are talking to Jeff Remas. And Jeff, why don't you kind of jump in and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, well, thank you. My name is Jeff Remas. I am the owner of Advanced Code Group. It's a third-party inspection agency located in Pennsylvania. And essentially, I have spent my entire life in the construction or construction-related field, growing up in a self-employed construction family. Was a contractor, licensed master electrician, was in the Marines, learned a little bit more about electrical, and eventually found myself transitioning towards the inspection end of things. And about 12 years ago, started Remas Inspections, Inc., which grew itself into Advanced Code Group, and we find ourselves today doing inspections and plan review on many projects.
Great, okay. And so I thought today we would just kind of have a casual conversation, and I had a group of questions that we can kind of go through, and if, we stray, we'll just, go from there if that works for you.
Excellent.
Okay, so I think here at Function, we deal with a lot of the building product manufacturers and helping them market their products. So some of these questions are going to come from that angle. So, I think we would all like to understand a little bit of your role and your role in keeping the building safe. And, if you could just elaborate on that a little bit.
Okay, well, basically the role of the inspector and plan reviewer, which is what we do, is not necessarily just keeping the building safe, but it's for the safety and health of the occupants and the public. We're there to ensure that minimum standards are met for that health and safety reasons of these buildings, whether it be a public building or even someone's house. And I'm just going to elaborate a little bit on that one, because sometimes we get people who will say, well, it's my house, I'm going to do what I want. And what they don't quite understand is it's their house today, but it may not be their house in 6 months, 6 years, or 60 years. And when someone else takes over and purchases and moves into that house, it's really our job to protect them, to make sure that whatever was done during construction or remodeling does meet the minimum standards.
Okay. Well, that's good. And so what would a normal day look like for you? Are you on a job site? Do you deal with both residential and commercial projects? Just so we all kind of understand, out of curiosity, what your day looks like.
Well, since I'm the owner of the company and the primary plan reviewer, the majority of my day is actually spent on the phone and going through blueprints. I spend a significant amount of my time on the phone with architects, engineers, other types of design professionals, contractors, building owners, manufacturers of a lot of the construction products, and reviewing blueprints. So that's what a lot of my day is. And every few weeks I go out in the field and I still perform inspections to keep myself sharp and keep in touch with everyone and, see what kind of problems we have and keep an eye, plus keep an eye on the guys that are out there doing the majority of the inspections for my company.
Okay. And this is probably a dumb question, but so where do your projects, where do they come from? Do they come through what channel, like the architects, or they're all different people would send you projects to review?
Yeah. The majority of our projects come from the fact that we contract with different municipalities to provide code enforcement services for them.
Okay.
So when people come and apply for a permit, or they want to have a meeting because they want to construct a building or renovate a building, whether it be residential or commercial, they pretty much, what they do is they go through us, and then we help them and guide them along with the process. Some of the work that I personally do, I do expert witness, and I will tell you that we do expert witness against contractors, against other inspectors and building owners, usually when there's a significant injury or something goes wrong or there's a construction defect. So some of my business does come in that way, and I see another angle of things. You look at things differently. And more and more we seem to be getting a lot of architectural engineering firms that will like to utilize our services just to kind of review and go over their blueprints and answer some questions for them before they make official submittals to the other areas of the country where they are, where they are working.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you're seeing more architects get involved because of all the different code changes?
In a way, yes. Certainly on the commercial end of things, it's very difficult to do anything commercial without having to utilize a design professional. The majority of the states have some form of the international codes, and they're very specific about when a design professional is needed and when they're not. And of course, many of the states have their own rules and regulations on when a design professional is required. I'm even finding out that some local municipalities want a design professional for certain aspects of residential construction. However, that's not as prevalent. And it also depends on the type of construction. With residential, anytime you go outside of the prescriptive building code, then you are into engineering. And at that point, you do need, in most cases, to get a registered design professional such as an architect or engineer involved.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So another question I had is, what is the key difference between retrofit rehab projects and new construction, kind of in your mind, or I guess you're coming in at different phases, right, on this, but just to give us your thoughts on it, do you see that it's different, or do you have to do your job differently based on these type projects?
Well, to be quite honest with you, a lot of the retrofit, rehabilitation, remodeling jobs are more difficult for us, for the contractor, and even for the owner, because sometimes people are trying to put, I guess I could say, a square peg in a round hole. Mm-hmm. You have an existing building that may have been built a long time ago, and they're trying to make things work, but structurally it may not, what they want and what they could do are often two different things. Whereas in new construction, you're starting from scratch, you're laying it out, you're putting everything where you want, and if you want to put a bathroom in a particular area, you could make structural changes in your design phase, whereas the shell and the existing portion of buildings are already in place when you do remodeling. And of course, remodeling is also much more expensive than new construction in general, because you have demolition, carry away, and it's just more difficult to work with. It's harder to run plumbing and wires and mechanical equipment especially. So remodeling is very much more of a specialty area, especially in, whether it's residential or commercial, but especially in commercial construction.
Right. So you work on both types, and would you be brought in on both type projects?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and we every day. Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. So when you're brought into a project and you see problems, do you make recommendations on how to fix these problems, or what do you do?
Okay. First of all, I have to let you know that we are not design professionals, and we're not there to tell someone exactly what to do. We can guide them and help them, but we can't come across as being designers, because there's always more than one way to make a correction or to fix something or to address an issue. And if we tell them one way and then they'll come back and say, well, we found out there was another way, it would have been cheaper than what you told us, we can't get involved with that. And liability-wise, we're just certainly not designers. But we do work with the architects, engineers, and contractors to kind of guide them and say, hey, we've seen this done before. Maybe you should consider this. And at that point, it makes things a little bit easier, for them, because they can do their own investigation and then come back and go, yeah, that's what we're going to do. But this way, they're the decision makers. Many times we come across problems such as problems with framing, and rather than them tear apart framing, There are ways that, we know that there are manufacturers that make certain connectors that you can just add on and fix the problem without it. And that makes sense. But we unfortunately can't directly steer them right to a particular manufacturer or a particular type of fix.
Okay. But you can, just if you've seen something out in the field that works, you could suggest that type of application.
Perfect word, suggest. Absolutely. Because the last thing that we need to do is get involved in well, he told me I had to do this. We actually do hear that often.
Yeah.
It becomes an issue. We go, no, we suggested you to do this. You have to make your own decisions, but that's a whole other.
Right.
That's a whole other.
So here's another dumb question. So when you make those suggestions or you make recommendations, it's all done in writing, right? So that you give them back a document that shows what needs to be done, correct?
Well, yes and no, and no and yes. When we do an actual inspection, and our company in particular, whenever we do an inspection, before we leave that job site, you get an inspection report from us, an inspection sheet that will tell you whether you passed or failed, and if you failed, why you failed. Okay? Some people want the specific code sections written in. Others, we just write our own brief description, because everything that we write up has to be code-based that we can back up. We can't, it's not just our personal opinions of what we like or don't.
Right. Yeah.
So we do give official inspections are in writing. If someone wants a consultation with a report, we will do that. But in general, when we have a lot of our meetings, or people just want to meet us on a job site, it's normally just a verbal conversation that we have with them.
Gotcha. Okay. That's interesting. Okay. Are there any trends you're seeing that building product manufacturers would be interested in for product development? Are you seeing, like you said, there's problems with framing? Are there any other things you see that are that you see a lot of that manufacturers would be interested to know about?
As far as trends, I guess the biggest thing, it's the same story for forever in the construction business. Contractors are always trying to find ways to do things with less labor and less material. That is never going to go away, and I think a lot of design professionals are trying to design that way and be somewhat what we call minimalist, whether they go into what we call advanced framing, where they change to a 24-inch on center, but it creates issues, and there's pluses and minuses to everything.
Right.
As far as one particular trend, I would just kind of have to say that there's no one specific item other than we're just seeing new products that come out, and people are trying to use them sometimes in the wrong application, but that's also something I think.
But more so to save money, probably. Would you say that would be driven by the cost?
Absolutely, and sometimes the labor is more important than the actual material cost. So if you can find a product that will reduce labor, but in significant amounts, that's usually what hits home with a lot of the contractors, and of course that's going to make them more competitive with their bids. But in general, to answer your question, there's no particular trend other than that.
But that's good. That's interesting. That's good to think about. So, as when you're as a building code official or you're on the job, and what people do you typically work with? And I have down here the architect, the GC, the sub. Are you communicating with all of them, or is there one that's more specific that you communicate back with?
It's really all of the above. We've worked with homeowners who are do-it-yourselfers that want to do their own job and are looking for some guidance and have questions and code questions. Or we have questions for them because they submitted an application and doesn't have information on it for us to issue a permit. And before projects get started, we'll have meetings with property owners who will come in and say, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing. What could we expect? And then it just continues to roll forward where we're starting to talk with an architect, and we get a call from an engineering firm, then we're looking at blueprints, then contractors start calling, asking questions.
Okay. So really everybody on the team, yeah.
It is a complete and total team effort, including the manufacturers, because once the job gets started, or sometimes during the plan review process when we're looking at prints, and an architect will specify a particular product that we've never worked with, never heard of before, or is outside the normal, scope of work, what we're used to, then we can at that point contact the manufacturer and say, hey, what kind of information you have for us.
So would you contact the manufacturer yourself? I mean, do you contact the manufacturer yourself directly?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Probably, I would tell you every single day, but definitely a few times a week, we are on the phone with manufacturers, asking them questions. Actually, just this past Monday, I had an electrician call me because he had a conflicting labeling issue on a piece of equipment where one part of the equipment said one thing, and then another part of the equipment said something else. And he's like, I don't know what to do. I don't want to fail an inspection. So I called the manufacturer direct and said, hey, you have a labeling issue here. What are we supposed to do? What's in your guidelines? And we kind of talked through it, worked it out, and I was able to contact the electrician and say, hey, this is the intent. This is what they want. This is what's written in their installation instruction guide. And, it is just bad labeling.
So do you find when you call the manufacturers that you always get prompt, and you can be honest, prompt replies, that you get good information, or is it difficult to get what you need out of them? And I'm generalizing here. Is it difficult to get what you need out of the manufacturers as far as answers to those questions?
Generally, no. We normally don't have a problem, especially, and it's fortunate for us and for the whole team involved, when we identify ourselves especially when we identify ourselves as a building code official or as an inspector who needs to speak with them about a particular project that's going on right now, they have a tendency to get on the phone rather quickly. And most manufacturers seem to be very responsive to us because they realize that it's an important aspect for their bottom line,
right,
for their sales. If people are going to have a hard time installing a product because there's no information available, things are going to suffer on their end.
Okay. Right.
Not that we want to see that, but it's just that it's an unfortunate thing. But
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so in thinking about the product manufacturers, can you think of specific ways that they can help you make your job easier? Are there any other things? Are there any other tools they could have, or anything to make your job easier when you're trying to work through some of these issues?
Yes. Absolutely.
Give me the list.
Okay. The most important thing that we need as building code officials, as inspectors, as plan reviewers, we need actual data literature specific to the product showing that it, for example, maybe it went through third-party testing, and we can see the third-party testing report. Do they have what we call an ICC-ES report or an old legacy report to back up their claim? One of the biggest problems that we have, and that's why I'm bringing this up, is that many manufacturers have really great marketing material with great flyers that make claims, but we're trying to ask them, like, how could you make this claim? We need to know how did you arrive at that?
Mm-hmm.
So the marketing material is great to sell the product to a contractor, but then to be able to back it up with the code officials, especially when we're non-prescriptive and we're going outside the box using a product, we need that information, and we need it available basically at our fingertips. So if they can put that information on their website,
mm-hmm.
So that we can access it, it'll often save phone calls.
That's a good idea. So that you know on the website just directly where to go, so that you're not constantly looking through different layers of the website to figure out. If it was very clear on the website, that might be a help.
Absolutely, because some of the manufacturers are really good about this, and some of them, quite frankly, need a lot of help.
Right.
They're just behind the 8 ball. You know, if I can go and it says building official, click here, I know that 99 out of 100 times I'm going to find exactly what I'm looking for, because they know what we're looking for. They know what we need. They're marketing this product.
Right.
So,
yeah, that's a great idea.
It is. Yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so how can a building product manufacturer stay ahead of code changes? What organizations, websites, forums can help, keep them informed? Like where would you send them if you wanted to help educate them?
Well, the first thing I would tell them to do, since the largest organization is the International Code Council, I believe that it would really behoove them to belong to the International Code Council and get involved with the International. And I'm not a big proponent of any particular agency. It's just that the majority of the codes in this, in the country are, written through the International Code Council. So that's a great place. There are other forums. I actually run a building code forum called thebuildingcodeforum.com that has a ton of inspectors, architects, and engineers on board who are discussing code issues, on a regular basis.
Okay.
Daily there are situations that come up. But I think that it would really, the biggest thing I would say would be for them to be directly involved with the International Code Council at the very least, and if they have any trade organizations that they, belong to associations, they usually are well informed, because a lot of the trade organizations have their own particular division that may be just dedicated to code and legislation and so on and so forth.
Okay. So on your forum, if, let's just say a manufacturer had a question, it's something that they could post there and get an answer?
Well, they can get an opinion from a code official or an architect or engineer, whoever's going to, hop on. It is an open, free forum, but it's just jam-packed with a lot of information, with tens of thousands of subjects and over 100,000 posts and so on and so forth. There's a lot of information in there.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Okay. What is the best way for a manufacturer to educate a consumer, about building codes and the compliance with their materials? So would you say a consumer could also, if they were trying to learn more, would they go to the same places, or are there other places that a consumer would feel more comfortable going?
Well, as far as the consumer, I think if the consumer is like, I'm thinking of a homeowner, I think that's going to be a little more difficult. If the consumer is a contractor or an architect or engineer, it's providing that information on your website. However, I will tell you that one of the best programs that I've ever witnessed, that I think is probably also genius marketing, is there's a manufacturer that makes a lot of products for the industry, and they are extremely progressive with putting on free seminars where architects get credits, people who have International Code Council certifications, inspectors, they get credits for attending these. They're free seminars. This company is extremely good about distributing literature, and what's really good, and we use this to our advantage, a lot of their literature actually has the code sections cited in them to show where their particular product is code compliant. So it's really about reaching out and thinking outside the box, and not just waiting for people to come to you, but to invest money in education.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think that's always needed. So, what are the top 3 challenges you face when it comes to code enforcement? I'm sure there's more than 3.
There there are more than three, but if you want the top three, the previous question kind of segues right into that. The first thing would be educating the contractors.
Okay.
That is the first challenge. It's educating the contractors on the code requirements so that they can use products, with confidence, knowing that, okay, if I use this, I pass.
Right.
But, providing education and again, I'm not dissing, or giving the contractors a difficult time here, but in general, if you're, being truthfully honest, many of the problems we see are the direct result of a lack of code knowledge for contractors in general. There are a lot of outstanding contractors out there who are probably, and some I'm sure are well versed beyond an inspector, but in general, that is the biggest problem. That's number one. It's educating the contractors on the code requirements. That's the biggest. The second one is ourselves, the inspectors, and I'll even say, I'm going to group the architects and engineers in on this one. Inspectors need to be more consistent, and they also need a lot of training and education. And the same thing could be said for the architects or engineers, because we work with architects that are at all different levels. There are some architects out there that we quite honestly, whenever we see blueprints come in, we just go, oh, here we go. and then there are others where we get the prints in and we're like, oh, okay, thank God he did the job, because we know it'll get done. This is going to be an easy plan review.
Right.
So there are, but inspectors getting all on the same page, that's really a big issue with us being consistent as decision makers. But I like to group us together with the architects and engineers on that one, because we have the same inconsistencies with them. And the third biggest thing is kind of, I would say, educating the public as to why we need some of these codes and why some of these codes are required, and to kind of cut us some slack so that they realize that there's a reason that many of these items are required. And I'm just going to elaborate real quickly on one particular issue that came up in the past. A couple of code cycles ago, the National Fire Protection Agency, NFPA, made a change in the National Electric Code to require tamper-resistant receptacles, essentially child-proof receptacles, for dwelling units, residential applications, in most applications. Okay. Immediately, the hearsay throughout the inspection and contractor community was that, it's these manufacturers again, they're going in and they're paying the lobby to get all these changes made. And that's why everyone, they were fighting it. They were getting municipalities to waive that portion of the rule, when in fact, the entire reason why that was added to the code was because the CPSC, the Consumer Product Safety Council, came to the code hearings well prepared, showing that in a 10-year period, there were 25,000 emergency room visits by children age 8 and under. And those were only with the hospitals that were participating in the study. So they were able to come in and clearly show that, hey, you know what? We have a need for this because we're having, over 2,000, over 2,500 children a year, just 8 and under, just those that are reported, and just those that go to the emergency room. And this was just those emergency rooms that participated.
So they were showing a need for what they were trying to do.
They were showing an actual need, and we have had those receptacles available to us for years because they had been required in pediatric areas of hospitals. So that's where I'm talking about the education. A lot of times people do not understand why certain things are required, and often it's misinformation and hearsay. Well, that's the manufacturers. That's, it's only because they want to sell this, when it's in fact not the case.
Okay, that's interesting. So if you could give a manufacturer one piece of advice, what would it be? I know it was probably, to me, it goes back to probably educating. Be better educating and make things more easily found and available. Is there anything else you could contribute to?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. Educate, provide information for all of us so that we can access your information, and at the same time, be open-minded and understand that where we're coming from when we ask for a lot of this information. Because as code officials, inspectors, plan reviewers, we have a responsibility and a liability, and we need certain information to show that yes, this product is approved, this product did have third-party testing, and this product is suitable for its particular use. It's really educating, and I'm going to throw one other thing in there, would be to take the time to ask questions when people call up to ask what type of product they could use. And kind of ask them questions instead of being generic, because in many instances it may have a large impact. And I just like to use a quick story, so that it kind of drives the point home. We had an issue with a home that had over 30 structural issues in it that we wrote up as deficiencies because the contractor had actually changed. He framed it completely different than what the blueprints had, and ended up with 30 structural deficiencies. They needed to find a way to control, in this particular example, rafter thrust. So the contractor presented information to the manufacturer that was inaccurate, and went back to his engineer. His engineer said, "Oh, you already talked to the manufacturer? No problem. We'll spec this piece of equipment out to fix this." And when we got it, we're like, "That's not right," because the manufacturer wasn't presented the right information, but at the same time, they didn't ask all the right questions.
Right.
And this really trickles down to even for example, the local lumber houses. A lot of the local lumber houses are now taking information and figuring out what size engineered beams are required in certain areas. But they don't have the knowledge to do that. They're only going by what they're told, or they're given prints, and they don't really know how to read them. So I think a lot of it all comes back to education. You really need to educate not just the end user, but those people that are selling the product.
Right. So that kind of brings me to a question. So how do you get educated, and how can the manufacturers do a better job of reaching you? Like what ways do you get educated, and what type tools are best for you? Do you go, website? What's best? What can I go back to them and say, hey, this is how you can, reach Jeff? I mean, not you specifically, but.
Right. Well, everyone needs to have a website. It's a very internet-driven world we live in today. The information needs to be at our fingertips. We can't wait for a fax or wait for someone to return a phone call. If the information that we need could easily just be put on the internet so that we can go to your website, that would help tremendously. And start educating, start putting on seminars, start, looking on a small scale, try it in certain areas. And I think that they may find that when they start doing seminars, they start getting a following of people who want to use their particular product.
So if you saw a seminar, would you show up for it? I mean,
as long as it's in our schedule.
Yeah.
If we're going to find an educational value and it's not just a sales pitch, then, and that's always the dilemma. The fact is, if you are the manufacturer putting on the seminar, you don't need to do a sales pitch because they're already following you and they know you're the one who's up there. You know,
right.
If your name, their name is, that manufacturer's name is plastered on every single PowerPoint page that that you're going through. Yeah, they know why you're there. You know, so the key emphasis needs to be on product application. And so, again, education and transparency. When I say transparency, just the availability of product information, but the stuff that the code officials need, that architects need, so that we know, oh, okay, you know what? This joist hanger is also rated for uplift, and we need that because we have a cantilever deck.
Right.
You know, it's not just, and that's the problem. When you go in Lowe's or Home Depot, they'll say, oh, the hangers are over there, and you don't have anyone with the technical knowledge, and people are purchasing things, and homeowners are failing inspections because they're utilizing the wrong product. And then they're having to tear it out and do it again, and it's an added cost to them because they don't know any better, because the education isn't there.
Right. It ends up being an added cost to everybody, really. So.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, is there anything else you, if you're thinking about that you would tell the manufacturer, anything else you want to kind of close with, any thoughts, or this has been great. I've actually learned a lot. So.
Well, not really. I think we've covered everything, and I don't want to put anyone on overload. It's just, we need more information, and we need relevant information specific to your product that's going to show us that, especially third-party testing. That is one of the really key things. We don't care that you've tested it in your facility. That's it could be perceived as a biased opinion. In many instances, in order for us to make a decision, we want to see, independent third-party testing, independent third-party data. That's what we want to see.
Okay. Do you read any that you can think of, any industry publications? Like if you were going to read something to an industry publication, what are some of them off the top of your head that you look at?
Right now, there's not much to choose from because everything's going online and a lot of magazines have gone away. But the only thing that comes into mind that actually covers a little bit of the code and a little bit of construction would be the Journal of Light Construction.
That's a good one.
Yeah, the Journal of Light Construction seems to be still standing the test of time, where it covers a lot of things, and it seems to me that it's primarily residential.
Contractor focused too, a lot, isn't it? Yeah.
Right, but a lot of contractors and everyone else and inspectors will read that particular magazine. That's the only one that happens to come to mind. Okay,
that's good. Okay. All right, Jeff, well, I really appreciate you doing this, and I'm sure everybody else, will. And if there's some questions that, people come up with, then I'll just send them your way, too, if that works for you.
Absolutely. I don't have a problem. I love what I do, and it's an exciting job, believe it or not.
I'm sure it has its more exciting moments, depending on what you're doing. So.
Well, it certainly does. It certainly does.
Well, great. Well, thank you for doing this.